So far what we've done is we started with let's reiterate what we've talked about. We started with the word Buddha. It's a really good way to start. It tells us the job, you know. Buddha. Rid of all the rubbish, full of all the goodness. That's the etymology of the word Buddha. The same as the Tibetan word Sangye. That tells us exactly the job to be done. We have to therefore know the mind, because this stuff exists in the mind. Delusions exist in the mind, virtues exist in the mind. And Buddha says we can rid the mind of the delusions and develop to perfection the virtue. This concept is so simple, but it's a revelation, because we don't talk that way in our world, do we? We give equal status to all this stuff. We think you'd be abnormal if you didn't have delusions. So Buddha's view is quite radical, psychologically speaking. That's his thing. So if that's the case, that's the end result, we know the job. The job to be done is to be your own therapist, as Lama says, and learn to first get single point of concentration, then understand Buddha's model of the mind by studying it, and then begin the job internally, ridding the mind of all the rubbish and growing the goodness. I mean, that's it. That's being a Buddha, you know. Just takes a few lifetimes, that's all. Don't hold your breath. So then we thought, well, okay, we've got to start. Where do we start? We've got to start in junior school. You know, got to start by abiding by the laws of karma, practicing ethics, and understanding the Buddhist logic for ethics. We talked about that, not just assuming good, being a good girl and a bad boy. That's not ethics. Buddha's view is it's a natural law. No one made it up. There's no punisher. There's no rewarder. There's no creator. So it's a natural law. He has observed with his mind that karma is the law that runs the universe, and so morality and ethics is this natural law. So then he says every millisecond of what we think and do and say seeds in our mind, programs our mind, and produces our future experiences. So as His Holiness says, karma is like self-creation. We looked at this and the logic behind it. You know, Jesus, like I said, Jesus says don't kill, so does Buddha. Difference, the reason is fundamentally different. Jesus says it's because God said so. Buddha says it's because, guess what, honey, it'll cause you suffering. Very different, very different. We looked at all this, and we looked at a bit like how karma works, how we purify karma, looked at the vows, the benefit of living in vows. And then we start to look. We looked at this in the context of the four facts for the noble ones, the four truths for the noble ones. So we looked at the first kind of suffering. That's what we looked into junior school. Karma. That's the first kind of suffering. How to stop the first kind of suffering. How to stop the bad things happening is to not kill, not lie, not steal. In other words, stop creating the causes for the bad things to happen. We were just that. And then we began to look into the middle scope, to high school, like I like to call it. And begin to look at the root of the problem, the delusions. There are two main causes of suffering in the second noble truth, karma and delusions. So we looked at karma, now we're going to look at delusions, and we've been doing that. So he said, as we said, Buddha says there are 84,000 ridiculous states of mind, but he narrows them down to 3, thank goodness. Ego grasping, attachment, and aversion, and we've been looking at these, you know, how they're the source of our pain, the source of our suffering. So that means if they are, and if we can get rid of them, it's obvious, it's evident, we need to know what they are and how they function and how we identify them. And that's the tricky job. This is the tricky job, you know. So let's look more then at the character of delusions, the character, or even the way the mind works in general in Buddhism. It's very interesting. So we step back a bit. We look at this text we study in the monasteries called Lorig, mind and awareness, and it's the way the mind works. It's a totally fascinating, not a long teaching, and it's based on this extraordinary work of the previous Indians who mapped the mind using concentration, and then the Buddha's view of the mind. It's coming from these Indians before the Buddha, you know. So basically you learn the epistemological model of the mind, which is fascinating. It's mind-bogglingly fascinating. It's the way the mind functions. It's unbelievably fascinating. We're not discussing the brain. We're discussing the actual cognitive process itself, called our thoughts and feelings and emotions and sensory consciousness, etc., etc. It's utterly fascinating. So according to that model, there's 2 ways our mind functions. We have sensory consciousness, and we have mental consciousness. And so the crucial point in Buddhist psychology is to understand the distinction between these. This is really powerful. We'll see, this implies, when we describe this, you'll see it points to the way Buddha talks. It points to his whole approach. So right now, as Rama Yesi says, we make the body the boss. We are driven by our senses. We are driven by our body. We only think we are, all we are is the body. This is our view in the world, isn't it? Enormous power. We give power to the body that it simply doesn't have, according to the Buddha. So what's sensory consciousness? It's really crucial to understand the distinction between sensory consciousness and mental consciousness. It's massive. So in a really simple example, I might say to you, I'll look over here, I'll go like this, I'll pick this thing up and I'll go, oh, that's not a bad cup, it's not too bad, looking fairly reasonable. I don't think it's that pretty, but let's pretend I think it's pretty. Or whatever. It's not a very pretty cup, I'll say. So very naturally, we'll all assume, won't we, that you see the sound, you hear the sounds coming out of my mouth, so you look in this direction, and you see me looking at this thing, and you hear me say, I don't like that cup much. So we all naturally assume that my eyes are looking at a cup that's not so pretty. Do you agree with that? How we think. We don't question. I think my eyes see a not a pretty cup, or sort of reasonable cup. Well, there's something ridiculous, I'm sorry. So he says the sensory consciousness, okay, we'll talk about it in a more nuanced way as we study it more, but simply speaking, our mind, consciousness in general, has sensory and mental. So the sensory, really spelling it out, is that part of our mind, our cognitive process, that functions, which is not physical, mind is not physical, that functions through the medium of the eyeball. In this case, eye consciousness. The tactile consciousness functions through the medium of the nerves and whatever. Ear consciousness functions through the medium of the eardrum and the whole and the bits and pieces. So you've got the physical and you've got the physical and the mind. Sensory consciousness is mind. It's not physical. The eyeball is physical. So clearly your eye consciousness can't function if you have no eyeball. That's evident. They're interdependent. But eye consciousness is not the eyeball. So then sensory consciousness, all states of our mind have their own particular object. The way Buddha talks is the mind cognizes like a mirror. Lama talks about this in Mahamudra. So all states of our mind have their own object that they cognize. Mind is referred to as subject. And all moments of mind have their object that they cognize. So what is the object of cognition of eye consciousness? Well, precisely two things. Shape and colour. That's it. They're like dumb animals, But look at what we think eye consciousness sees. Divine, handsome, who's my boyfriend? Andrew still, he's all right, I haven't given up yet. Handsome Andrew. Divine this. Ugly cup. We don't question that. We don't analyse it. But Buddha says, don't be absurd, I'm sorry, eye consciousness doesn't have the capacity to see a delicious cup or anything else. It sees shape and colour. So the obvious question is, what part of my mind is coming up with what a pretty cup, what an ugly cup? Well, guess what? That's your mental consciousness. That's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. That's what we have to learn to unpack and unravel. That is where the problems are. So what's happening is this. Eyes go there, eye consciousness does its job, cognizes that shape and colour, and in a millisecond, and I mean this sincerely, quicker than Google, sincerely, genuinely, quicker than Google, up comes, oh, don't like that cup much. So what's that? That's a concept. It's an opinion. It's a viewpoint. Where does it come from? My mental consciousness, where I've stored all my opinions. Eons of opinions, but forget just eons, just think of this life. You store, remember, no thoughts go astray, like Geshe Tashi in London said, without shooting a movie all day, everything gets stored in here as memories. That's how come we can be clairvoyant, we can access it. So the few memories I've got in my life that based on my attachment, what I think is nice, ugly, beautiful, this or that, blah, all stored here, and in a millionth of a millisecond. Even if I'm wrong, I'll have an opinion, I promise. Up comes an opinion. I don't go, oh, what's that? Get out my Google shape red handle. Oh, that's a cup. What colour is that? Oh, that's red. No, it's all stored in here. And you know exactly what you think about it. Out comes an opinion about that shape and colour. But it all happens so quick. And we don't even know we've got thoughts. We just think, we know it's we wouldn't even call it an opinion. We all just think it's the truth. It's the truth. That's an ugly cup. And you dare to argue with me. Who do you think you are? It is an ugly cup. Well, this is how we are. So it's basically what goes on, in other words, at this grosser level that we function in day-to-day life, and this is all we posit in our culture, is at the level of mental consciousness, not sensory, mental consciousness, it's conceptual. We live at the level of conceptuality. Now this is shocking. That includes not just here, like mathematics and musical theory, that's conceptual, but here called emotions, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, low self-esteem, anxiety. They are mental consciousness and they are mental constructs. They are opinions. They are all conceptual stories. Conceptuality by definition is stories, is thoughts. So it's a shock to hear that anger is based in a thought, but that's exactly what it is. So what this is where we're so disconnected from ourselves. We only know we only know we're feeling something when our body's experiencing it. When you feel the shakes and your mouth raw, vomiting out, the tears are coming. Oh, I must be angry. So we think anger is the emotion. The feeling. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the body shaking and the blood racing and the heart beating. That's physical. It's a symptom of the mind, the conceptual stories, deeply ingrained, having their berserk story. So it impacts upon the body, so you shout and yell. It's conceptual stories. It's all conceptual. All the things we live at the level we live at are conceptual, and it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the grossest level of our mental consciousness. So when we get shamatha, as we talked before, when we get a subtle level of consciousness beyond the conceptuality, as Rama said, that's non-conceptual. We don't even posit such a level of mental consciousness in our materialist world based on neuroscience and everything else. And it's too abstract for our mind. What do you mean non-conceptual? We don't get it, you know. So we live at the level of conceptuality. We live at the level of conceptuality, whether it's musical theory or mathematical theories or botany theories or theories about cooking or anger or love and hate and jealousy and compassion. They're conceptual stories that we are familiar with. And the stronger we are familiar with them, the more they become they trigger the feelings in the physical body. And we only notice them when it gets to become the body's experiencing something, which is when the wheels are falling off and it's just too late. In other words, we have to learn, as I've been saying, we've got to get some concentration, we've got to have Buddhist model of the mind, exactly the description of these different states of mind, and then we've got to learn to listen to the conceptual stories before they rise to the surface and vomit out the mouth and make our body shake. It's all conceptuality. Everything, we live at the level of opinions. Now, like we've been saying, the Buddhist model of the mind, dividing into three categories. They're the neurotic, deluded, ridiculous, distorted conceptions that are opinions that are a load of rubbish that have no basis in reality, ego grasping, attachment, anger, and all the other 83,997. Then you have your virtuous states of mind. Now they're also conceptual stories, but they're relatively valid. They're valid conceptual stories. They are in sync with reality. The delusions have no relationship to reality. They cause us to live in la-la land. This is Buddha's deal. So we obviously have to distinguish between all these crazy thoughts in our mind. Some valid and some not. But we can't tell one bit from another, you know. And we don't think they're conceptual stories. We think they're feelings, and we think they're the truth. Bad enough, as Lama Zopa says, that the way everything appears to us, this is the way they say it in Buddhist psychology, everything out there appears back to us in the aspect, as they say, of whatever is going on in our mind. So, you know, it's like you've got your different glasses on. We talk about your rose-coloured specs. When you've got your rose-coloured specs on, that's attachment. Everything will be delicious and divine. You forget you've got your rose-coloured specs on. You think it is delicious and divine out there in the thing. That's what Buddha's saying. And it's a load of rubbish. Our mind is made up a story about it. The cup, the cake, the me, and everything else. And these levels, there are levels of these stories. So where we're at the moment, looking at the second scope of the teachings, or high school I have to call, we're looking at the gross delusions, attachment and anger and the others, then they are also misconceptions. The root misconception, the root delusion, the root lie is ego grasping, the one that's most difficult, which we'll talk about. Emptiness, we have to get that one. The other ones, they're also lies as well. So we've got to try and identify them, how they distort, they embellish, they exaggerate, they decorate. As Lama Zopa says, all these delusions in the mind, the neurotic, the first category, all the neurotic states of mind, these conceptual stories, that are also ancient in us, this is why they're so emotional, because they trigger the bodily feelings. What they do is decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers upon layers of characteristics that just aren't there. That's the whole way that Buddha talks. From here to enlightenment. When we get this approach, we're on track with Buddha. So we have to distinguish between the fantasy conceptions and the valid ones. The delusions and the virtues. Very simple way of putting it. That's the job of being a Buddhist. So it's distinct to Buddhist psychology. We don't talk like this in our culture. So the killer is, as long as everyone says bad enough, that we see things wrongly, but the killer is we believe it's true. In fact, we don't even believe that when I say it's a pretty cup or he's so divine, we don't think they're opinions. We don't think they're opinions. We think we are seeing truth. That's what samsara is. We believe in what we see because we've had these views for so long. The way things appear to us, they appear to us through the aspect of whatever's in our mind. So if anger is there, it'll appear ugly. And we don't say, well, I think he's ugly, but of course I could be wrong. No, he is ugly. He did that. We're all like this. This is exactly how samsara works. And because the habits are so primordially deep, and Buddha's talking countless lifetimes, not only do we not know that what we're seeing is coming from our mind, we don't know that, have no idea. Not only do we not know that we're misconceiving things, like I said, we believe that that's coming. So in other words, the cake is such a simple example. The object of attachment. We know, it's very vivid, the cake, if you're attached to food. I'm attached to food, so I can explain it. I know it well, I'm very familiar, I'm an expert. What appears on the plate is not what's on the plate. What appears on the plate to my eyes, to attachment eyes, is not what's on the plate. And the fact is, we know it immediately. The fact that someone else can see chocolate cake and go, yuck, and I can say delicious, already proves emptiness. We should get enlightened at that second. It proves exactly there's no cake from its own side. But we're so thick with our delusions. As long as she says, non-duality, emptiness is not hiding from us. It's staring us in the face. Emptiness is the character of that cup. But we're as blind as bats, you know. Even attachment, I mean, that's a gross delusion in comparison with ego grasping. But we believe 100%. When you're hungry, your stomach's empty, all the conditions are nice, and you see that thing, you know. You can prove, I mean, you just go, we know it. Even though you know your mind, you see it's so ancient, the habit. You just kind of are magnetised by it. So excited, so delicious. Can't wait to get it in the mouth. We know it's horrible because we don't put it in that one, not my mistake, you know. We know the way it goes. Because the habit is so ancient. We're programmed with it. That's all habit is. That's all karma is. Habit. A bunch of habits, you know. And this is the tragedy when we do negative things. I mean, the first level of practice, Buddha tells us to not harm, at least don't harm others. They're the heavy duty ones. He doesn't say don't have 5 pieces of cake. He doesn't say that. Cake doesn't mind if you eat a lot of it. People do. So at least his first level is at least don't harm sentient beings. Eventually you realise that eating too much cake is also negative. You just harm yourself. But killing harms others and me. So at least stop that level, heavy level, because that's the cause of the first kind of suffering. Lower realms and being harmed and brutalised, etc., etc. We don't want that. So, what was I saying? I lost my plot again. Oh, I'm so distracted. Am I getting Alzheimer's, do you think? And I'm serious, am I getting Alzheimer's? I keep forgetting things. Oh, I might be getting. Okay, I hope not. What was I saying? I lost completely. Believing in. Oh yeah, I was about to tell you a story. Oh God, what was it? It was such an exciting story. I can't remember. About how the mind lies. Oh, what was it? The more you look for it, the more it goes, isn't it? It'll come back.
We're all going to eat the cake.
Huh? What?
We're all eating the cake.
So we're eating the cake, the cake. Well, just from its own side, the cake. I was about to tell you about the cake. Oh, what was it? Never mind, I'll just keep going, it'll come eventually. So anyway, we're back to the cake. So there's like this brown triangle, brown shape. Think of it like that, So thinking conventionally, we're going to establish that's called a chocolate cake. That's a valid statement. It's a chocolate cake. It's not a carrot cake. It is a chocolate cake. But that's not the cake we see. So what attachment, when attachment is there in the mind, this whole story, not having enough, feeling dissatisfied, hankering after something, all excited. When you think of it, you get all excited. Then the next bit of attachment takes over. It's the anticipation. That's the delicious part of attachment, isn't it? The hankering and wanting is very painful. But as soon as you think cake, you start to get excited, isn't it? And then apparently when we do the 12 links, how things work, when you're first dissatisfied, oh, what's missing? Oh, I'm needing something. Oh, cake. And the bulb goes on, that craving kicks in, cake, and then the next one, grasping, kicks in, and that makes you get up and get to do it, So they work beautifully. So all the exciting part of attachment is now coming, which is the anticipation. Isn't it? So excited, can't wait, We know this. And even as you're a good Buddhist, you've been doing this for 40 million years, you still get caught up in the story. You just get sucked into it. So you look forward to it. You try not to behave like a 3-year-old. You try to behave nicely, Don't get too excited. But the mind's so happy, all anticipating, all buoyant, all perky, isn't it? You don't get happy now, you get the cake. So you go there and you pick it up with everything, and it goes into this hole here. So it can be a really good cake. We know that. So and what it does do, it triggers. This is the point. This is logic. I know the story I was going to tell you. It's a very depressing story, but it's exactly how samsara works. So what happens is this is a rough example. What happens is this, because of karmic connection from eating food during the universe here, and then particular habits in this life, you get used to, like Australians love our Vegemite, right? You give it to an American, they vomit. Or Tibetans like their yak cheese, like eating rocks, Whatever the habit is, you develop the habit and you get the taste of it, it's stored in your mind, that memory. So there's cake, the icing on it, you can see straight away, exactly, because you can judge, you've got discrimination, you've got kind of all these things, paying attention, all these bits and pieces of your mind, all working, checking on it. You really can see it's a good cake, you're very intelligent. So you can't wait to get it in the mouth. And you get it in the mouth. So what happens is this. It does, in fact, trigger a pleasant feeling, which is the point of the whole exercise. You don't really want the cake, you want the pleasant feeling. If you wanted the cake, you'd be just happy to look at it. That's just not the same, is it? You understand? You can learn to be happy. You can learn to be happy. I remember Lama Zopa telling the story about one of these lamas who was in prison in Tibet and was starving. They were in a concentration camp and they were starving. And the Chinese guards, they lived right near where the Chinese guards' kitchen was, and they hit the smell of it. It was so unbelievable. You can't imagine the smell. They were starving. They'd go searching in the latrines for undigested beans from the Chinese guards and eat them. So they had no food. They were starving, So he said, he noticed in his mind, he would have to practice, from the delicious smell of the cooking, he got pleasure from it. He tried to get nourishment from the smell. Try to get some contentment from it. Do you understand? It's very powerful, isn't it? Very amazing. Anyway, so what happens is it does trigger pleasure. So this is the thing. Pleasure arises. First of all, attachment from past memory knows what... If you've never had it before, you have no attachment. You have no idea what it's going to taste like. So you're brand new, but you've done it before, you're all programmed, you get it in the mouth and it triggers. And you notice you've got discrimination, that's one of the mechanics of the mind, you've got discrimination, you can check it's the best cake, largest flour, nicest combination, best this, blah. We're very good at all this, we're very clever. So it's delicious, it triggers a very pleasant feeling. Now that's called happiness. So you have to ask yourself the question, why aren't you content with that? We're not, because of dissatisfaction. Even as we're eating it, even as we're having the first mouthful, you're hungrily anticipating the next one. I remember reading about some girl saying how good Tinder was. Tinder? You just go plink, plink, and a boy comes. You get free cheap sex. You know, it really makes a lot of sense. You have to go to bars and spend all that money and have to look all cute. You just go boom and they come. She said it was a bit depressing after a while. She was out of bed putting her clothes on and she looked over in the bed and he was on Tinder getting the next girlfriend. That's called dissatisfaction. Do you understand? That's how it works. Same with the cake. Why do my delicious tea? It's not nearly as good as coffee. I'm so depressed. I cannot get coffee. I can't get tea to taste as good as coffee. I've given up coffee, you see. So I knew exactly how to make my coffee perfect. I mean, exactly. Not too bad at the tea as well. It's just not the same though. So anyway, the coffee was so delicious, that first cup, isn't it? So delicious, you can't believe it. And already you're dying for the second cup, halfway through the first one. And so that means we're so full of the story, the anticipating, the excitement, the greed, you don't even enjoy it. I mean, when you're really hungry and you have that delicious, you can't wait for that nice piece of toast with butter and Vegemite on it, and you eat the whole thing and you go, oh, what happened to my Vegemite toast? You don't even remember you ate the damn thing, you know, because attachment's so greedy. We know that. So all this excitement, all this build-up, all this anticipation, and what attachment's believing is you just found the whole universe. You found happiness, you know. Finally, I found happiness. Vegemite toast. So we know you get the mouthful. And the point is, Buddha's right, it does trigger pleasure. He's not saying it's not pleasure. It does trigger pleasure. But we know, as soon as you've had the first mouthful, the pleasure stops. The anticipation starts again. So you've got another mouthful. We know that. It's really hard work to trigger pleasure when you're in samsara. Look at how much hard we have to work just to get a meal that people spend 4 hours cooking meals that is ingested in a minute. I mean, that for me is clearly absurd. Look at the amount of work we have to do to trigger pleasure. I mean, I don't want to be too gross about other kinds of pleasure. Look at the work we have to do just to trigger a bit of tactile pleasure with a person. Half of it's anticipation. All the frantic neediness, the panic, the drama, and the anticipation. And in the moment, you get it, and it's gone like a dream. In fact, like your stomach is stuffed. You look at the cake, and it now looks repulsive. Before it looked so divine, we know that. So we believed first that this delicious, delicious cake that looks so divine, like it's vibrating deliciousness, begging me to eat it. Is it not? Is it not? It's the cake. Poor me, what can I do? It's not my fault, it's the cake's fault. Is it not like that? And before you know it, after 3 pieces, where did the happiness go? Somehow you missed it. Is it not true? And you keep trying. Maybe the next piece just might do it. But already you're so depressed because you know you've missed the boat. The happiness is gone. Wherever it went, God knows, but I didn't get it. So you put another piece in, hopefully this one will do it. By that point you want to vomit. We know this is true. And then you get indigestion, you get guilt, you get dissatisfaction, you get fat, and the cake looks revolting, and then you go to the toilet. And you get up the next day and you do it again. Are we communicating here? Is this not how we get our happiness? Have we not learned something? What? So yeah, the story's going to tell us about the story. This is a killer. This is really kind of showing us pain in samsara. You know, I always use the example of this boy, the mother of whom I met like years ago in Copan. I always tell the story. I must have told it 1,000 times. On every video I've ever done, I've told the story. I'll never get bored. It's such a perfect example. A little boy. She told me how he'd keeping it simple, this little boy was a fisherman. As soon as he met fishing, like age 5, whatever, he fell in love with fishing. That's it, fell in love with fishing. So what's happening here? Why? This is the logic. Past karma, familiar with fishing, or some kind of killing, familiar with it. Habit, it's ingrained, it's programmed in his mind. The karmic imprints are there. So he doesn't think about fishing until the fishing appears in front of him. That's the trigger. That then triggers, it's like triggering the memory. It's like that. Because we don't think, oh yeah, I recognise this, but it's like that. the memory, the habit is triggered. And all this happens in a millisecond. So then what it does straight away is trigger this pleasant feeling. That comes first, feeling. Remember I said feeling in the third category of states of mind, negative, positive, and these other ones, like I call the mechanics, intention, attention, concentration, discrimination, all these parts of our mind all function to make us do anything properly. They're just working in the background like mechanics, you know, not overt. And so one of them, oddly, is called feeling. Like I said, there's simply pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neutral feeling. Forget the neutral. We've basically got pleasant and unpleasant, and we know that attachment's job is to find the object such that when we get contact with it, pleasant feeling is triggered. That's the job of being in samsara. And that's our method for getting pleasant feelings. So like we said before, Buddha's saying, hey guys, I've got a method to get happy feelings without objects. It's called getting rid of delusions. And you can taste it in single point of concentration. Your mind will be blissful because it's the natural state of your mind. Bliss for the Buddha is the natural state of our mind when it's unencumbered by delusions. We don't know that. We think pleasure is what you get when you get the object of attachment. So he sees the fishing, in the millisecond pleasant feeling is triggered. And the more the habit, the stronger the pleasant feeling. And then in the millisecond what's kicked in after the pleasant feeling is attachment. And what that does is the stronger the habit, the more the pleasant feeling, the bigger attachment paints the picture of divine. I always remember this, one Australian journalist, he's dead now, Robert Hughes. He was the arts writer for the Time magazine for like 40 years. And he wrote several books about Australian history. He's an amazing writer. And he was a fisherman, and he waxed lyrical about fishing. He talked about the first time he went trout fishing. It was like, he said, it was like a cosmic experience. All that's saying is he had such strong karma to kill that it triggered unbelievably pleasant feelings, because familiarity equals pleasure. The more you do something, you build a habit, pleasure is triggered. So it was literally, and that's what we mean by, I'm not going to be gross here, but sexual, we call it sexual pleasure. Take away the word sex, it kind of misleads us, because Christians call it a blessing from God or something, you know. So much pleasure has to come from God. You can't just, it's too rude to have it on your own. Okay, I'll be careful. Okay, never mind. So it's called pleasure, and clearly it's very delicious pleasure. It's like the top dog pleasure, isn't it? People talk like that. But it's just a question of degree, that's all. Whether the cake or a body or killing fish, whatever the trigger is the result of the habit. So, you know, one of my friends on death row in Kentucky, Mitch, my Buddhist friend there, said, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. So we can't cope with that in our culture. We can't cope with ugly men who jump on little girls all day. We just think they're evil and they should go to hell. But this is because of habit. In their case, one of them torturing, habit. Habit when? Probably as an animal. I'm sorry, animals torture. Animals torture. Look at animals. Not being rude, but the animals countless times, Buddha says we should have compassion. They torture each other, rip each other's flesh out. You know? Well, on his opposite, when he was a very little boy, he was a spider. And spiders, it seems, like to kill their fly before they eat it. So he said he killed the fly himself. He didn't say why, but I think he's just being compassionate, wanting the poor spider not to correct the negative karma of killing the fly. He killed the fly for the spider and gave it to the spider. The spider didn't want it. He'd taken his pleasure away. The killing was part of the process. One fellow in America called himself BTK years ago in Kansas. Bind, torture, kill. For 30 years, his secret life, like in a dungeon he created. His fantasy world was about torturing people. He'd kidnap people, couples, families, had this whole elaborate procedure for torturing them, and he got, as he called it, he got his sexual pleasure from it. Sexual pleasure just means very strong pleasure. That's all. Don't confuse it. The stronger the habit, the more powerful the pleasure. So even that fisherman, the more strong his habit, he called it a cosmic experience. Meaning the pleasure was really incredible. So this is the point. The regular old-fashioned little fisherman, forget the torturer, forget the cosmic experience, just a regular old fisherman. The pleasure, and because that's all we want is pleasant feelings, so the logic, and then attachment comes in and makes it look, it like paints a delicious picture. It paints a delicious picture. That's what it does. Attachment paints a delicious picture of the cake. And we believe that picture is true, of course. So all that happens in like a millisecond. So the logic is, of course, if you get pleasure when you go to kill fish, killing fish must be a cause of pleasure. So of course you become a professional fisherman. Well, the poor old torturer, he couldn't do it in public. He had to do it in secret because he's going to get insulted and put into prison. So of course he had to do it secret. Imagine if that poor fisherman was attached to killing poodles. He would be in trouble. He'd have to go around at night secret because no one likes killing poodles. See my point? But everyone accepts fish, you know. And of course fish die quietly. They don't squeal and shout and run away. They don't have legs, the poor things. So all those years is the point. All those years he was a professional fisherman. He was a lovely boy. He didn't kill his mummy. He didn't want to kill anybody else, just the karma to kill fish. And because fishing is considered fine in our culture, he wasn't considered a naughty boy. He was a kind boy. She said he shared his fish. He was generous. But the habit was so strong, of course, he defined himself as a fisherman. He spent his life as a fisherman. That's why he took a vow to kill fish. That's why that vow is why it's so powerful. He vowed to kill. It defined his entire persona. I am a fisherman, you know. He even called himself Salmon. Sal for short. That's how attachment does. Attachment makes up stories. Writes a novel, you know. Fantasy. It's like hilarious. So this is the point. He never saw suffering because he just saw something nice. The torturer knew intellectually it wasn't cool to torture people and then kill them. But the pleasure from his habit was so intense that man knows it's not cool to jump on little girls, but the pleasure from the habit was so intense. Look at us with our pathetic habits of putting too much cake in the mouth. We can't stop. So how fortunate we're not born with a habit to want to jump on little girls all day, or torture people, or kill fish. How fortunate. Because we practiced virtue in the past. That's why we have compassion. So he was fishing every day, all day, as long as he went fishing, every day. And he always wanted his mummy to go fishing. She didn't like it. She didn't want to go. But she went one time, roughly speaking. So this is the point. She didn't have any tendency, she had no tendency to kill. No karmic connection with killing fish. So what was the experience for her? It was easy. She saw the truth. They were suffering. She saw these bodies of the fish flapping in the boat. What the hell do you think they're doing? They want to get back in the damn water. What do you think? He just saw flapping fish. Oh, that's what fish do, you know. I remember my auntie, Robina Bliss. I was called out to my auntie, Robina Bliss. But she became Robina Arkashauskas when she married a Lithuanian. Anyway, uncle, we call him Stasi. He was a Nazi, you know. He was in the Second World War, he was a policeman in Germany. Then he got debriefed by the CIA when the Australians had all these white people in. You know that, don't you? The White Australia policy. They were desperate for white people. All the Brits didn't want to come. They couldn't stand all this desert and everything. So the poor Brits, they gave up on the Brits. So they thought after the war we'd have these Europeans. So they kind of lowered their sights to foreigners. But they had to be the Eastern Europeans because they had blue eyes and white skin. Did you realise that, Australians? Everyone thinks Australia's nice. We've got such a good reputation. It's very curious. We've got a good reputation. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So he was one of them. He was a Stasi. All the Nazis got in, you know. So Stasi came to Australia. He's a nice man. He bought a property up on the river, the Murray River, because he wants to get, he's a peasant. He goes fishing in the fishing season, quail killing in the quail season, duck killing in the duck season, eel killing in the eel season. He was really good at it. I met creatures I never met before with Stasi. So we go up there fishing, we go up there swimming in the river. So we'd lie on the bank of the river. Then Stasi would come up with his bags of fish and his bags of ducks and bags of quails and bags of eels, drunk. But the fish, though, all the others were dead, but the fish, he'd chuck them on the ground. It was 100 degrees in the sun, you know, and they were flapping. I never thought of fish. I didn't know how they die. I said, Stasi, they're not dead yet. He said, yeah, that's how they die. I nearly fainted. I never thought of it. Do you understand? They died this agonising death. He wasn't a cruel man. He had this massive veggie garden, and he never put spray on it. He said, the flies, the creatures can enjoy the veggies. He said he was very generous. But he used to have the habit of killing, that's all. Did you know, Stasi?
Yeah, I think carp are legally meant to be left on the bank.
Who?
Carp. Fish carp.
Oh, well, you're funny, ridiculous bit of information. Thank you, Justin.
They don't blink when they die.
What?
They don't blink much when
Oh, shut up, Justin. So 3.5 century point of fish. I was so shocked. I didn't know that fish died slowly. I mean, that isn't... And so that's why one of the ways they say, one of the factors in the karma you create is the way being suffers. That's torture. That's torture. We think it's kind of nature, and you go out with your daddy and you share the ocean with him while you're torturing these poor sentient beings. Dying this agonising death, you know. But the point is, because his attachment had printed a story in his mind, that was the lenses through which he was seeing fishing. He saw his own fantasy. The torturer knew these people were suffering because it treated such enormous pleasure in himself. He couldn't stop doing it. So the more they were freaking out, the more he tortured them, the more they screamed and cried, the more orgasms he had. That's just called pleasure. Are you getting my point here? Don't confuse it with sex. We think it's sex. It's just very intense pleasure. That's all. That's all. It's very fascinating. And the stronger the object, the stronger the connection, whether it's killing or torturing or just liking girls. My friend Panos in Greece, I was telling this story, and he's given me permission to tell this story. I used to tell it, but I felt guilty. He had my permission, he said. He's into sex. Now he's old and he doesn't care so much. But he said when he was 6 years old, walking down the street of Athens with his mummy, strict Orthodox mummy, and he passed the cinema of the half-naked lady poster, and he says, "Oh, mummy, why is my penis standing up?" Of course, mummy's mortified, you know. And the cinema lady cracks a joke about how he's going to be a lady killer. All that is because his habit to have contact, not with cake, not to torture, not to kill, but to have contact with girl shapes. He was attached to girl shapes. Due to past karma. That's all. Habit. Program. Boom. Up his little thing stands, you know. So the reason for that is, this way I described the Vajrayana model, that we have this 72,000 subtle channels in the body, and the wind energies are all coursing through the channels, and then all our different states of mind are connected to those winds. So attachment is connected to its own winds. So when the object out there triggers pleasure, an attachment in his place kicked in, and then boom, the winds went to that piece, and it went up. Are we communicating here? Am I embarrassing you? I'm trying to be funny about it, but without being too gross. But it's technically explained, you know. It's just, we go, and that's why in our culture we think attachment is physical. That's why you poor men just can't help it, isn't it? I have to be careful what I say. Control myself. But that's, we think poor men can't help it. It's nothing to do with the body. The body is just the result of the mind with an over-exaggerated story of deliciousness, whether it's torture or a girl shape, and then the thing stands up and all the pleasure, because the pleasure's coming. It's all very technical, because of past karma. That's all past habit. I know a friend of mine in Sydney who was in there for jumping on too many girls, raping them, right? So they gave him drugs to make him like female, so his thing couldn't go up, he had little breasts and everything, but he said his mind was exactly the same. He still kept fantasizing about raping girls. Nothing changed, just his body was changed, that's all, because we thought it's not physical, it's his mind. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's his mind, and the mind affects your body. So that's why you can change your mind. So this is the point, this is proving emptiness as well. For sure, you know, just to finish with Panos, so he said when he got to about age 12, he was saving up his pocket money. He didn't go buy a toy train, he went and got his first prostitute, he was so happy. He loved going to prostitutes because he wanted the pleasure. He was very generous prostitutes. He said he was very generous. He didn't mind the fat old ladies and the young ones. He just didn't mind. He liked female bodies and female people, and he was very generous and kind. If they'd be fat, they could be old, he didn't mind, just as long as he had a nice feeling from them. It's called attachment, that's all. Attachment. And contact with that object, because of past habit, triggers pleasure. So at least if we just have to worry about old cake, we're not doing too bad, okay? You understand my point? Be grateful. You don't want to jump on people and stab and kill and torture, for God's sake. It's habit, that's all. Then feeling comes, and then attachment kicks in and makes it look delicious. This all happens in a millisecond. This is technical. This is a technical explanation of the way the mind works in relation to karma, and it's powerfully important to understand if we're trying to be Buddhists. So we can then deconstruct our experiences and stop just buying into the nonsense that our mind's telling us, you know. And the fact is too, like with Panos, or anybody, whether it's cake, after 4 pieces and now the same cake that looked divine looks disgusting. We know that. That's enough to prove emptiness. The same with the girl. Poor men think they can't help it. you know, and always blame the girls. We, as Catholics, you know, it was my sin if you boys, your thing stood up. Excuse me, that's so rude, you can't, it's so obvious the men run the show. Isn't that completely shocking? It was our sin. Are there any Catholics here? Did you know that, Justin? We were blamed if you got excited. That's what the priest told us. That's incredible, isn't it? That's the men running the show, you know. Isn't it? It's fascinating, isn't it? So naked. I have to be careful. I mean, I've been men countless times. It's okay. I'm not complaining. So anyway, what was I saying? I'm getting a bit fraught here. What am I saying? About pleasure and attachment. We've got to understand the relationship. Pleasure is not attachment. Attachment isn't pleasure, but they have this intimate relationship. The attachment's the problem, not pleasure. Lama Yeshe would say, the more pleasure, the better, dear. But right now, because it's linked to attachment, we think attachment is the cause of it, that's why we're in trouble. So you get karmic habit, plus attachment, plus feeling, boom, you've got suffering. And we don't question. That's the tragedy. That's the tragedy. That's why we have to have discipline. First level, live in vows, control your body, control your speech, on the basis of a valid ethics. That's the beginning of practice. That's the beginning of practice, you know. So obvious. Yes.
Can you just, you said that was a...
What's sweetie?
You were just saying that that's an explanation of emptiness. Can you just...
I meant by the emptiness meaning in that brief way. Okay, emptiness meaning nothing has an intrinsic nature. So if I'm believing the cake is the cause of my happiness, which I do, that means I'm believing the cake has this definite nature of being delicious. But if you vomit when you eat chocolate cake, what you see is a disgusting cake. If you describe what you saw on the plate and I describe what I see, we would not recognise the descriptions, would we? Because you have one view because of aversion, I have another view because of attachment, but you believe your view is true, and I believe mine is true. So if we understood that nothing has an intrinsic nature, just that statement, we'd go, oh my God, there's no cake from its own side, it's our own projection. That's the meaning of emptiness. We'll go into more detail. And we know this, we can hear these words very simply. Nothing exists, it's clear. Two opinions about the one thing proves, because this is the point the Buddha is saying, if it did have intrinsic character of deliciousness, everybody would see delicious. Do you understand? But we've got to expand on that one. And that's why we're as blind as bats, you know. We see our own projection, and then we don't even realise it's a projection, we believe it's true. We believe it's an objective truth. That's the cake on the plate. That divine Andrew, that ugly, whatever it might be. And we go from pillar to post, believing in our own nonsense, that's all. And that's what Buddha's saying is they're all conceptual stories. And the delusions are stories that exaggerate, that embellish, that exaggerate, that decorate. That's the killer about them. They lie to us, and we believe the lies because the habit's so strong, you know. And what makes us believe the lies, makes it so irresistible, is the pleasure that is triggered. That's the tragedy. If it didn't trigger pleasure, we could be Buddha by now, easily. It's easy to give up anything if there's no pleasure. Just our point. But we're desperate for the pleasure. And the samsaric method is you've got to get an object, because we don't have pleasure. We don't know how to trigger pleasure in our own mind, do we? We don't know how to have natural joy. Occasionally it might happen sometimes, but we don't really know how. So we have to get an object to trigger it. That's why Buddha's saying it is pleasure, but it's really polluted, contaminated. And he's not being moralistic, he's comparing it with, and that's what I said, that Venerable Robina said. Even when I interviewed him in 95 in Mandalay about his Shine retreat, 2.5 years, up in Spain, Saling. He just touched upon the 5th of the 9 stages of concentration, he said. And he said, there's no question, Robina, the joy, I forget the words he said, the joy I experienced in my mind was so superior to any joy or pleasure I'd ever experienced through my senses. This is a simple fact that Buddha's pointing out. Don't hear it as religion, as moralistic, nothing to do with it. It's a simple fact. He's saying the pleasure we get now is grotesque. It's like the pleasure of the wild pigs in Tibet who are underneath the toilet waiting for the hot shit. Our pleasure's like that. In comparison with the joy of our own little mind. I mean, it's free. You have to pay for it. You have to go on Tinder. Do you understand? Are we communicating? Okay. So do you have any questions, people? Huh? Yeah.
when I was a little girl, I had an absolute terror at birthday time when balloons were blown up, and my sisters would find it funny to run around the house threatening to pop it because I was terrified of them banging.
So then?
And I'd hide under the bed. It's gone now.
Why are you telling me about this? Is something coming? I'm excited. What's coming?
Karmic thing.
Oh, don't ask. Ridiculous. Think of it for yourself. Obviously, some of you must have had some trauma where a big noise happened.
No, this is when I was...
I know that. It's a karmic imprint of a trauma, and then you hear the balloon that reminded you of it. You just didn't know it, that's all. Of course, darling. Everything comes from karma. Everything comes from karma. There's no other reason. Like that?
Yeah, I just wanted your...
My explanation. Okay, good. Yes, Tony?
What happens if you throw the fish back in?
Well, I mean, I've heard about fishermen doing that.
It's just a sport.
No, I understand that. I find it utterly fascinating. But I think it's a little bit unfortunate you've got to put a hook in their mouth, though, isn't it?
At least it's not killing them.
No, I know, at least it isn't. It's sort of like torture. It's a bit like a cat. But it's a bit like a cat with some mouse scaring the life out of the poor mouse and then letting it go. So it's a bit less cruel, but it's still a bit torturous, isn't it? I know, I've heard people do that. It's very weird.
If the fish had a choice, it might...
Huh?
If
What?
the fish had a choice, it probably wouldn't want a hook in its mouth.
That's right. So what are you saying, Tony? Go. Certainly it's not as bad as killing, but it's sort of a bit torture, isn't it? It's a bit mean.
Is the karma lower because it's the bad karma lower because you throw the fish back in?
Well, don't say the whole sentence again.
Karma at a lower level.
Yeah, of course it is. It is. I'm sure it is. I mean, of course it is. But it's called torture, basically. It's not called killing. It's called torture. I'm just trying to be reasonable here. We do our best, though.
Kiss the fish before you fry.
Kiss the fish. Well, at least say a mantra in the fish's ear. At least that. Bless the poor fish before it dies an agonising death. There's an interesting story up at Chenrezig years ago. One girl up there, woman, married to a fisherman. So, of course, she fell in love with the fisherman. She ran his business for him. A very nice girl. She'd go out fishing with her friends in the deep ocean with this particular big fish they'd get. So one day, she's a very little girlfriend, got this big fish, pulled it in, and it's in the kind of very deep water where you pull the fish up from the very depth. It's like their guts rip out because it's like, when divers come up too quick, you can't save the fish once you've done that. They're ruined. So this big fish in the boat, and all of a sudden, so this other big fish leapt into the air, looking into the boat and circled the boat, looking in. She was convinced it was like the husband of the fish. She said, I stopped fishing from that second. Isn't that interesting? That was interesting. No, it was interesting that she stopped fishing. It was great. Yeah. Another story, a ridiculous story too, a different one, just shows. For her, seeing the suffering of the fish triggered her wish to stop it. But there's another case where it increased the wish for the fisherman to continue to do it. So in Boston, Nick Rebush, Australian fellow, who runs Lamiyasi Wisdom Archive, and every year on the special days, the special holy days in the Tibetan calendar, where it's very potent days for doing good actions, they go up to Maine, just across the state, and buy lobsters. It's a lobster country, So this particular year they bought 462 lobsters or something, and then saved to special practice and put them back in the ocean. So they happened to be on the local television. Well, the local fishermen were really annoyed. These lobster fishermen called the same television station, called them, and they went and caught exactly that number of lobsters. We're going to show those Buddhists. How dare they insult our business? They were really offended, so they caught as many lobsters to prove the point. So that increased their wish to call even more lobsters. They felt so insulted, So it depends on your karmic imprint, doesn't it? So feeling, attachment, karma. We see the workings of these. This is samsara. This is how we're stuck in samsara. That's why we have to understand the mechanics of it and learn to know the delusions and then stop believing, as Ramazova puts it, our most urgent job is to stop believing in our karmic appearances. Because everything out there, every millisecond of everything out there, how it appears back to us, is to do with our karmic imprints. Our karmic imprints. This is so fascinating. Made up by our mind. It's happening out there. There are real people and real things out there, but our interpretation of what we're doing is made up by our mind. And all the way to emptiness, it gets down to even everything. Everything that we see is our karmic appearance. It's a pretty cosmic concept, We'll discuss it more on the weekend. So the whole job is, once we understand this even roughly, is to start deconstructing, understanding the process, and stop believing as much as we can in what appears to us. You know, you're angry with someone, it's my karmic appearance, Robina. First, they're being mean to me because I was mean to them, but even if they didn't mean anything mean to you, just your view of them as being horrible, it's your karmic appearance, you know. Don't believe it. It's such a powerful practice, but the hardest for us, because it all happens in a millisecond, and we run like a magnet to our view and believe it's true. That's what keeps us stuck in samsara. That's what's so hard. That's what's so difficult. That's why, in the end, we need good morality, ethics, living in vows, lots of purification. And then we need shamatha. But as I said, as Venerable Rene said, he could not possibly have gone to the mountains and all these years doing all the meditation he's done. But that first big retreat he did, maybe not the first, maybe 2.5 years doing Shine. There was no way he would have been qualified without first being a monk, doing purification, lots of study, and even lots of teaching. He would not have been qualified. So to get to the point where you can go to the mountains and work on getting Shine, that's already pretty advanced, you know. You're a pretty amazing practitioner already. We have to start somewhere, you know. And that's where you see actually, where's Jane?
Yeah.
Where are you? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay, so this is not what you said is not true, actually. It's not taught that much. It is, but not in the way we think. When we do our meditations, we learn since little children. In the monasteries, you visualize Shakyamuni Buddha. We visualize Chenrezig. We visualize the deity. That is the object of concentration. That's the classic object of concentration. Not the breath, not the mind. That's Dzogchen or Mahamudra, and Alan Wallace teaches Dzogchen, the mind. Lama Geshe taught Mahamudra, the mind. But the object we classically use to do concentration is the image of the Buddha. See, that's not the breath one, that's the Theravadan one. And the breath is one we tend to think of as or the mind. So what does Alan teach when he does Shine? What's the object of meditation?
All different. So he teaches the breathing, but up to the Dzogchen methods as well.
So breathing and the mind, he uses two.
Yeah.
Just two. The mind is Dzogchen and breathing is the other one.
Well, there's shamatha with the sign, without a sign.
But the object of shamatha, what does he use as the object of shamatha?
The mind.
The mind.
Yeah.
Which is Dzogchen.
No, he doesn't consider that as being Dzogchen.
How does he teach? But Dzogchen, you're looking at the mind.
It's like you're not thinking of anything.
No, but the mind is the thing you're focusing on, isn't it? In Dzogchen. That's what you're doing in Mahamudra.
No, it's non-meditation.
I know what that means. What are you focusing on? Never mind that. Forget that. Mahamudra is a meditation technique where the object of meditation is the mind. The other one that Buddha classically taught at the beginning is the breath, because it's easy to locate. They're the typical views we have of what shamatha is. But the classic one in Tibetan Buddhism is the visualization of the Buddha. You focus on that. So Alan doesn't teach that, I know, because it's not popular among most people. It is in fact taught, but it's implicit in all your practice, in your deity practice. And if you want to, when you do your deity practice, you can spend 5 minutes concentrating. And the Tibetan Buddhist view would be, the Mahayana view is, you can watch your breath for 1,000 years. The merit is almost nothing in comparison with just even 5 minutes of thinking the word Buddha because of the intensity of enlightened beings. And so of course the West doesn't like that. That's why Alan doesn't teach those. But that's the classic one and the Tibetan Buddhist one. The image of the Buddha is the object of concentration. So we do, in fact it's taught there, but it's part of a bigger picture, not just only on its own. Do you understand? What else, people? Questions? Well, yes.
Yeah, Robina, I had some questions around the influence of trauma on our minds and the Buddhist understanding.
So give us an example of a scenario, please.
Okay, so a baby is born into a violent family, thrown against the wall at 3 months of age,
Okay.
brain damage.
Okay. Brain
Brain damage.
Okay,
and
good.
then it grows up violent and in jail. Yeah.
Well, okay, is their brain really damaged or they're just kind of unhappy? Which, I mean, keep it simple. I mean, there's too many things there. Just keep it simple.
Okay.
Being born with a crummy parent who beats you.
Crummy parent who beats them.
And then later, how do you behave?
And they are very anxious and become addicted to drugs.
Okay, good. So, so what is the Buddhist explanation you're saying? You're asking for the Buddhist explanation of this?
Yes, but there's other questions around.
Okay, good. Go.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would there's a fair bit of scientific evidence that would suggest that the maltreatment affects brain development.
I understand.
And cause PTSD and affects the mind.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And also, one could say that the person's karma propelled them to be born in this family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I wasn't sure from what you were saying earlier whether the environmental influence
I understand.
would be seen to influence the person's mind.
I understand. Yes. That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, in general, I'll start the first point. In general, every millisecond of what any sentient being ever experiences, there's 4 ways. First, the type of rebirth. Second, the tendency. Third, an experience at the hands of others. And 4, the physical environment. So the main cause of a lousy physical environment, let's say polluted food, let's say poison gas that you smell every day, let's say living around sick and dying people, that's environmental karma from past. They're all those from past killing. First one. Second, how you're treated by others, the parent beating you. You understand? The result of your actions in the past. And then third, your own tendencies. And fourth, so his humanity. So you said he became an alcoholic and he was anxious. So they're both tendencies in his mind. So the point is this. He might have been beaten by his mummy and daddy, but if he didn't have a tendency to be anxious, and if he didn't have a tendency to be an alcoholic, that wouldn't have been how he would have responded. He might have responded another way. He might have got angry and punched them back. He might have, because he was a bodhisattva, he might have, because he was very patient, loved them and forgave them. It all depends on what's in his mind. So we make the direct relationship between abuse and an anxiety, but you'd have to have the tendency to be anxious in order for the abuse to trigger the anxiety. That's the key point. So, of course, the abuse is a powerful trigger if the tendency for anxiety is there. But if let's say a tendency to be angry is there, then the abuse will definitely trigger the anger. But if that person doesn't have a tendency to be angry, the abuse will never make them angry. It'll make them something else. But it always has to be a tendency there in the first place. So, of course, we are the product of external conditions. But the Western one is the condition is the only thing that causes it. And the Buddhist one is there has to be a tendency there first, and then as a result of your own past actions, you also have the parent beating or the parent being kind to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's the explanation. So, everything we experience is anyway the fruit of our past actions. But the crucial one there is, again, it's with kindness as well. It's with, if you like, say, I believe a man I knew in prison on death row in America who wrote a book about his own experiences with lovely short stories and about his own past. He was brought up in Los Angeles, poor mummy, she was a junkie, had horrible boyfriends who beat her up. Whenever he talked about it, you could tell he wasn't angry and he loved his mother. She was abusive to him. He adored his mummy. He had the sense that he was responsible to take care of his mummy. He was always very gentle and kind. That's how he responded. Another person with anger would have hated his mother. So we see this direct relationship, but it's not that simple. And you see what I'm saying? It's got to be factored in by what's here. So yes, in other words, the external is a catalyst for the anger, but the anger has to be there. The abuse has to be a catalyst for the anxiety, but the tendency for anxiety has to be there. That's the point. So it's not a contradiction, it's just an added piece. You get my point?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So if you're a Buddhist, you take responsibility for that, and then when you realise your poor mummy, you really, in the end, once you work through your own stuff, you would have compassion for your mother. Because you realise, what a maniac, and look at what she's doing to herself, and look what she did to me, she's only going to suffer for that. That's why those young Tibetan nuns had compassion for their abusers. Do you understand? And that's a big ask, isn't it? But this is using the view of karma, though. Do you understand? Yeah. What else? Any questions? No? No questions? We better go to bed then, and we'll have to say something more, one or the other. 8:30. No questions about it before? Feeling, attachment, all this drama. Makes sense, is it what I was saying? Explaining. Okay.